all is peace forevermore, on that happy golden shore. What a day, glorious day that will be. What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see, and I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. There'll be no sorrow there, no more burdens to bear, no more sickness, no pain, no more parting over there, and forever I will be with the one who died for me. What a day, glorious day that will be. What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see, and I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see, and I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be.
Sister Nell, thank you, choir. And Brother Dennis, if you would, come forward this morning.
It's another great day to be in God's house. And it's good to be at Union Grove Baptist Church. Again, I don't like the reason I'm here, but I enjoy coming and worshiping with you. My dear wife, she's been coming with me the last few times I've been here, but she is now a member of the praise team at our church. And it just so happened today was her rotation to be with the praise team. And so I gave her the day off to stay and do her job. But, it is just good to be here. And we're praying. Brother Ken's got 3 treatments left. I was talking to him last week and praying that'll be over and he'll begin to get his strength back and be back to his old self. And we continue to pray for him and appreciate him so much. He's a good friend. The Apostle Paul was one of the most influential figures in the history of the church. God chose him. He was an unlikely tool. He was out to destroy the church. And God stopped him in his tracks and said, I want you to come with me. And he did. His missionary effort stretched across pretty much the known world, all the way from Jerusalem to Rome and even to Spain. He had quite an influence on you and I. But Paul's life was anything but easy after he became a Christian. You know, some people think, and I wish it was this way, that, you know, I come to the Lord and I give my life to the Lord and then everything's smooth from then out. Doesn't work that way. Paul, in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, he says, from the Jews 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. 40 was considered the death penalty. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I've been in the deep. Journeys often in perils of water, and perils of robbers, and perils of my own countrymen, in perils of the Gentiles, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and toil and sleeplessness, often in hunger and thirst, in fastings, often in cold and nakedness, and beside the other things, what comes upon me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. You know, just because we come to Christ doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. I've already been to church today. Already heard a message. No, I didn't bring it for y'all though. I didn't take notes. Already been in Sunday school, and in Sunday school we've been studying the book of James. And you know, I just don't like it. I just don't like it. In chapter 1 and verse 2 of James, it says, count it all joy, my brethren, when you meet trials of various kinds. It doesn't say if, it says when. I don't like trials. But the truth is, the Bible teaches us that they are valuable to our growth and teaching us to trust Christ. Despite all Paul that lived through, he was not depressed. You know, you found him in the Philippian jail singing hymns, praising the Lord. Now, I'm afraid if you found me in jail, I'd be sitting over in the corner and saying, oh, Lord, why? Why me? But he was praising God. And you know, the longer I walk with God, I learn to praise God no matter what the circumstances are. Our joy as Christians, our joy is not wrapped up in circumstances. It's wrapped up in relationship. You know, I found as I've gotten older, the most important thing in life is relationship. You know, the greatest joy that I have is with my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. I've got a great-grandchild, well, a grandchild too, that live in my basement. And every so often, instead of going out their back door, they come up through my living room. And I get to see them. And you know, there's no more joy than to watch a child grow. The baby's 9 months old now. And everybody was thrilled the other day. The 1.5-year-old has a little small trampoline in our living room. And the 9-month-old crawled up on the trampoline by herself. You know, what a thrill. That's where our thrill is in relationships. And our relationship with God brings the greatest joy of all. Faith in Christ doesn't remove our problems. Life can still be hard. But with Christ, we can live the most rewarding life possible. This morning I'm going to read from Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. And if you have your Bible, you can read along with me. Paul writes and he says, therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, any comfort of love, any fellowship of the Spirit, any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others. You know, there's some expectations for our lives as Christians. That if we want to experience the full joy of the Christian life, there's some things that we need to do. We need to answer some questions. And they'll make a difference in how we face life. And the first one is very simple. Are you in Christ? Are you in Christ? You know, if you are in Christ, we have no expectation that life will be perfect, but we can have an expectation that life will be filled with joy. And I want to tell you something. Joy is better than happiness, because happiness comes and goes with what's happening around us. Joy comes from inside. Joy is in that living water that's Christ. It's in that living relationship that's Christ. You know, we can look forward to some things when we know Christ. We shouldn't be surprised when trouble comes. We shouldn't. But we can look forward to the good things. We were talking this morning in Sunday school about looking forward to the coming of Christ. You know, Christ is coming again. Now, we may be here when he comes. I remember when Penny and I were dating and we were engaged, there was a lot of preaching about the second coming. You know, I've noticed over the years that every so often somebody has figured out when Christ is coming again. And back then, there was so much emphasis on the second coming of Christ. I thought, well, you know, Christ is coming back before we'll ever get married. Well, come next January, we'll be married 50 years. And Christ hadn't come yet. But does that mean he's not coming? No. He's still coming. Do we know when he's coming? No. In fact, nobody does. And the Bible tells us that only the Father knows the date. God has set the date when he's coming. But he is coming. But I'll guarantee you this. Even if he doesn't come for another 100 years or 1,000 years, you're going to him. And you're going to stand before him. And you know, the more aches and pains that I have in this body, the more I look forward to being with Christ. Because I've read the last chapter of the book. I've read that all the pain's going to go away. All the sickness is going to go away. All the tears are going to go away. And we will experience joy forever. We will. But are we in Christ? Because if you're not in Christ, there is no hope There is no hope. Look at verse 1 of Philippians chapter 2. Therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, any comfort of love, any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy. You know, consolation is encouragement, exhortation. We need encouragement. We need encouragement. You know, I found out that my grandchildren do better with encouragement. My children did better with encouragement. I've seen people who beat kids down and they're always talking down to them. You know, I've got a 14-year-old grandson. And I hate to say this, but the boy's lazy. You know, I've seen 14-year-old kids, boys, that were hard workers. I had a nephew that way. He worked just as hard as anybody I know, you know. But my grandson is lazy. He don't want to work. I'm afraid he reminds me of me, but I'm not going to say that. But if I encourage him, you know, if I encourage him, he does much better. He needs encouragement. We all need encouragement. And Christ encourages us more than anybody because he loves us more than anybody. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 16 says, Now may our Lord Jesus Christ himself and our God and Father who loved us and has given us everlasting consolation, encouragement, and good hope by grace, comfort your hearts and establish you in every good word and work. When we have a relationship with Christ, we have something that nobody else has. And that's something personal with him. We have salvation. We have encouragement. We have joy in Christ. Are you in Christ? You know, the goal is to live the Christian life. But the goal is experienced by facing the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all part of life. You know, just this past week, I don't always understand life. I don't. Just this past week in the news was the story of a young missionary couple in Haiti that was murdered by gangs. There they are serving the Lord. And they're murdered. You know, what a devastation to their family. It's horrible. But you know what? They knew the Lord. They're in the Lord's presence today. And I guarantee you, they're rejoicing. They're rejoicing. This life is short. This life is hard. This life is difficult. We all face problems. All of us have issues. You know, when you get our age, some of us know what pain is. I've seen this little cartoon that said if I woke up and wasn't in pain, I'd think I died. You know, we know what heartache is. We've faced heartache. We've lost loved ones. Some of us have lost spouses. Most of us have lost parents. Some have lost children, which might be the greatest heartache of all. We know what it is. But we know that in Christ, we have consolation and we have encouragement to face these things. I don't know how people who don't have the Lord face life. I really don't. I really do know how they do it. Years ago, and I've probably told you this in the past, but years ago, over 40 years ago, my youngest daughter, when she was 11 months old, was diagnosed with cancer inside her eyeball and wound up losing that eye to cancer. Now she has an artificial eye. And I was talking one day with a guy at work. He was our NCR repairman, and he was in our store. And he was a cancer survivor, and we were talking about it. And he wasn't a believer. Now, his mom was, but he had never come to trust Christ. And we were talking about facing cancer and the difficulty of it. And his response was, well, you know, I just knew I was going to be okay, so everything was fine. Well, I know very few people that didn't know they were going to be okay. You know, one of my best friends died a few years ago from cancer, and the last time I talked to him, he knew he was going to be okay. Well, you know, that doesn't always mean you're going to get cured. But I want to tell you something about our experience with our daughter. They scheduled her for surgery, and we were worried. We were worried about our less than year-old baby. You know, cancer is a scary word. And my wife and I prayed, and our church prayed, and other people prayed. And one day before we had to carry her to the hospital to have her eye removed, the Lord spoke to my wife and I and said, Christy is in my hands. Don't worry. Now, that's all he said. He did not say, your daughter's not going to die. He did not say, your daughter is not going to lose an eye. He didn't make any promises to us about the outcome other than the fact that she was in his hands. And you know what? That day, we quit worrying. In fact, on the Sunday afternoon, she was scheduled to check in Piedmont Hospital to have her eye removed. We got up and went to church just like normal. I still remember that because the pastor made a big deal about us being there. And I thought, what's the big deal? That's what we do on Sunday morning. We go to church. But you know, there was no more worry. Why? Because the Lord gave us comfort. My friend had false comfort. He had false comfort. But we had the comfort of the Lord that he said, she's in my hands and you don't have to worry. That's what comes when we are in Christ. No matter what we're facing, we can know that the Lord is there with us. And if we don't survive this world, we'll be with him in the next. But the key is, are we in Christ? The next thing he says, fulfill my joy by being unified, of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done of ambitious conceit, but in lowliness of mind. We need unity. You know, right now, more than any time in history, I think the church needs to be unified. I've had the dubious call of going through a church split. Have you ever done that? It's the most horrible thing that can ever be. I've also, after that, and I guess God put me through that for a reason, I pastored 2 churches coming out of church splits. And you know, they're over the dumbest things sometimes. They really are. I mean, if your church splits over something doctrinal, like's happened in the United Methodist Church right now, that's one thing. But if you split over what color the carpet is, or where your pastor got his education, you know, that's a problem. And one of the churches I pastored split because the potential pastor went to the wrong school. And people just had a fit. And I pastored that church for 3 years, And in 3 years, every deacon's meeting I was in, they talked about what the other side did. Let me tell you something. We don't always agree. We don't have to always agree. You and I won't agree on everything, but we can always be agreeable. In Christ. You know, we don't have to win. In Christ. We need to have unity. We need to be like-minded and having the same love, of one accord and one mind. And that mind needs to be on Christ. What's our goal as a church? What's our goal as a Christian? Our goal as a church ought to be to carry as many people to Christ as we can. Our goal as a church ought to be to lead as many people to Christ as we can. But you know what? We lose sight of that. And we get to focusing on things that are not important. And we need to be unified in the purpose of leading people to Christ and not be fussing about the minor things. You know, there's huge disagreements in church about music. Huge disagreements. In my church, you probably wouldn't like the music. Now, it's not, I don't even know what you call it. We've never heard music like it. It's beautiful. It praises the Lord. But it's not all the standard hymns. We very seldom sing the standard hymns. When we first got there, we thought, boy, this music's a little weird. But you know what? We felt the Lord was leading us there. And I have yet to go to the minister of music and say, you know, you're singing weird music, you need to change it. Why? Because the Lord's led him to do that. And it praises the Lord. There's no false theology in there. So we sing it. In fact, he just wrote a song called God in Three Persons. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. You know? There's new music out there. We ought to be open. We ought to be open. You know, we just don't need to fuss. I still think we ought to sing the old hymns. And I think we can sing some new too. The Gettys wrote a song called In Christ Alone. I love that song. You know, there's still some people being inspired by God to do something. And we need to understand that. We need to understand. We need unity. Again, that doesn't mean that we agree on everything. But we do agree not to be disagreeable. And we do agree not to always have our own way. You know, as human beings, we like having our own way. My 1.5-year-old great-grandbaby didn't like it when her mama was holding her niece, the 9-month-old baby. She was jealous, but she's learning to like her finally. You know? I don't like it when people don't do things my way. But you know what? If that's what God's called them to do, that's what they need to do. I know I've told you about Miss Mary, little old lady in my church, little lunchroom lady. That's what she did for years, work in the lunchroom. Love Miss Mary to death. But I'm going to tell you about Miss Mary, and y'all probably got a Miss Mary somewhere in this church. If there was something in the church she didn't like, she marched right into my office and said, "Preacher, I don't agree with that." If there was something the church voted on, was voting on, that she didn't care for, she stood up and she spoke her piece. If the church voted to do it, then she supported it 100%. Never said another word. You know? She didn't go talking behind my back. She came to my face and told me what she thought. Now that's what we ought to do. We need unity. And we do that by sharing the truth with each other. Romans 12:16 says, be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble, and do not be wise in your own opinion. You know, the great philosopher, the Bandit, said, you know, it's according to exactly where you're standing in the United States, how smart you are at that moment. You know what? Every one of us are smart in our own ways. But we don't need to get puffed up about what we know. Because I'm going to tell you something. We haven't got nothing that God didn't give us. We don't have a thing that God didn't give us. If you got musical talent, God gave it to you. I don't have a bit. Not one dab. I think I've shared that with you before. So don't ask me to sing no solos. You would be sad. But you know what? I got logic. I can build almost anything. But God gave that to me. God gave it. I didn't figure it out. Everything that we have, God gave us. He put it in our minds. And we don't need to get high-minded because we got something. Humility is not popular today. Pride is. But we need a little humility. Christ had it. Look at what Philippians 2:6 says. Who being in the form of God, that's talking about Christ, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. You know, they had unity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They have unity. And we need unity. We need unity. But that's not all we need. And I need to hurry because I'm running over. We need motivation. And our motivation needs to be right thing. Let nothing be done from selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why? Why? That's the question. In this church, what your job is in this church, why are you doing it? Are you leading music? Because you get to be up front, and everybody comes up at the end and says, what a great job you've done. Boy, you're just wonderful. No. Hope not. Why are you doing what you do? If you're not doing it simply because you love the Lord, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're doing it for the praise of men or women, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. What's your motivation? Our motivation needs to be right. It needs to be right. It needs to be that we love the Lord. Why do you come to church on Sunday morning? To be seen? To show off your new clothes? Why? You need to come because you love Jesus. I was talking with one of the sweet ladies just earlier this morning. And you know, COVID taught me what a privilege it is to be able to come to church on Sunday morning. I'm not going to miss it for the next pandemic. I'm going to come to church and I'm going to worship the Lord because it's valuable. In fact, it's the most important thing we do every week. And we need to do it because we love the Lord. You know, if you've got a singing voice, you need to sing because you love the Lord. And by the way, David, all these people out here who can sing ought to be up here on Sunday morning singing. Because us who can't sing would love to be up here on Sunday morning. God gave you something. You need to be using it. You know? You know what I found out a long time ago in churches? A lot of times in churches, people who got the gift of helps Miss Kathy's got to get helps. Anything you ask that woman, she'll do for you. If she can do it, she will do it. And she'll teach a Sunday school class if nobody else will, because she wants somebody to teach it. You know, there are those people who they're not gifted to teach, but because the people who are gifted to teach won't teach, they teach. We need to use the gift that God's given us to do what He's called us to do. And we need to quit making excuses. Our motivation ought to be that we love the Lord. And then lastly, he deals with these in this verse, relationships. As I said when I began, the most important thing in life is relationships. Relationships. My wife and I, for the last 30 years, we've been parts of small churches. This small, some smaller. When we were at Doss, that church eventually got down to where they had less than 10 members. Which that doesn't matter to me, you know. What matters is that we're serving the Lord. Well, we left there and we went to a church that's huge. And the only people we knew, well, we found out we knew more than we thought, but we knew our children and my grandchildren who were there. We've been there a year now, and we've developed relationships, and we've gotten to know people. And you know, if you want to get to know people, sometimes you have to put yourself out. Sometimes you have to make the first move. Sometimes you got to go shake somebody's hand. You got to go talk to somebody. Because I want to tell you something. Relationships in life are the most important thing. And we need relationships in church. We need one another. We need one another. When we go through those hard times, we're family. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. And those relationships bring us together. Look, Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look out not only for your own interests, but for the interests of others. We need each other in church. We are a family. There are no Lone Ranger Christians. 1 Corinthians 10:24. Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being. If we help one another, we all reap the benefits. All of us. You know, this morning, I left church. Went to Sunday school, left a little bit early so I could be here in plenty of time. And our church has an elevator. We got 2 floors and they have an elevator for us old people like me who have bad knees. And I love that elevator. It's as slow as Christmas. It's as slow as Christmas. I mean, you can sing 4 songs while it gets you between one floor and the next. So I got on the elevator and rode down to the 1st floor and got out to head to my car to come over here. Well, before I got out of the elevator, I knew there's a couple of people upstairs in wheelchairs. I pushed the button for it to go back upstairs. Little bitty thing, but now when somebody comes around to get on the elevator on the 2nd floor to come down after Sunday school, it'll be sitting there. Little bitty thing, but it's not so little. We need to look out after one another. We need to have our eyes open, because that's what Christ did. We need to take care of one another. Sometimes we need to forgive one another. You know, forgiveness is hard, but you better look and see what Christ forgave you. Because the wages of sin is death. And he took the payment. He paid it for you. We need to look out after each other. And if we do that, we can see a difference in our world. Now it starts with the first question. Are you in Christ? Do you know Jesus Christ as your Savior? Well, you know, you say, well, come on, preacher. You look out here. We all been in church forever. We know the Lord. I don't know that. You know, I made that assumption one time about a man that came to my church. He came with his father-in-law. And I thought, well, he's been a Christian for a long time. You know what? He wasn't. But he got saved before he died. Praise the Lord for that. So don't ever make that assumption. You share with somebody that Jesus loves them. Jesus died for them. And Jesus wants to save them. And if there's anybody here today that doesn't know Jesus, doesn't matter how long you've been a church member, what matters is your relationship with Jesus. Is it right? Have you given him your heart and soul and decided to follow him no matter where that leads? You know, wherever he leads me, I'll go. That song, that's the key. Are you willing? Maybe you know Jesus. Maybe you know Jesus. But you've slipped away from him. You know, life is funny. It'll invade us. It'll get in our way. It'll try to block us from the Lord. Sometimes all you got to do is just make a new commitment. I had to do that many years ago. I had to get it right with the Lord. I kept looking for some magic formula when the magic formula was one word. It was obey this word. Obey God's word. Be obedient. Maybe you need to do that. Maybe you're here and you don't have a church home. I'm telling you what, these folks will love you to death if the Lord calls you to be a member of this church. David's going to come. We're going to sing an invitation hymn. If the Lord leads you, you come as we sing.